last question in 2017, okay? The position and successor method here, okay? So we're writing a couple of methods. Now, we have to, first of all, understand what is a position, okay? So they gave us this user-defined class called position, no methods, no instance fields. All they tell us is that there's a constructor. And so before I read anything else, I'm going to make sure I know what this is. So a position is two integers, and it's a row and a column, just like a matrix numbering system. And so I need to probably at some point in this problem create positions. I'm going to have to probably write new position. How did I know that? Because it's a constructor, okay? So they wouldn't be showing me this constructor unless they wanted me to construct a position. So I will at some point have to say new position, and when I do that, I'll have to give it two int values, the first of which will be the row and the second of which will be the column. Okay, so we're going to have to do that. And sure enough, in part A, right, the static method find position, it takes an integer value and a 2D integer array and returns the position of the integer given. And if you don't find it, you say null. Okay, so if we're looking at this matrix here, and they tell me find the position of 8, there's 8. Okay, that's an int value. This is an integer array. I'm going to have to write loops to move through this integer array, okay? And I'm going to have to take values from it. If I find the value I'm searching for, which in this case is 8, now I need to make a return. Now this is where it gets tricky. I don't return the row. I don't return the column. You can't return two things, and they don't want just one of them. So I'm going to have to take the row 2 and the column 1, and I'm going to have to encapsulate them inside of a position. I'll have to say new position, row, okay, or 2, comma, column, or 1, and then I'll have to return that position, right? If they give me a value that is not in the matrix, like 17, and I finish my search and I haven't found it, I'm going to return null. I'm not going to return 0. I'm not going to return -1. This is not an integer return method that I'm writing. This is a position return method. So like I said, the most important thing of you taking this test would be to understand that is the return type of this method, position, okay? So you have to use the constructor of the position class to make a position. They don't give you one. They have not handed you one. This is a static standalone method. We cannot rely on getting a position from an instance field. There is no this. All that we have available to us are an int, single int value that we're going to search for, and an int matrix of values. There are no positions. We have to create them, okay? So I'm gonna just, start walking across this matrix, and it wouldn't really make much sense to use enhanced loops here because we want these row and column indexes anyway, okay? So I'm gonna walk across the array. There is no instance field here, so all we have is int arr. And we go, okay, one at a time, okay? You cannot use the word this here. All right, and so now we'll go to the column, all right? And then the column would be less than the int arr 0 dot length. All right, and I'm just gonna look this up, okay? So int arr has 2 subscripts, right? R and C, that's why we created them. If that comes out to equal num, all right? I think the best thing to do at this point would just to go ahead and make a return. If you make a position, it's gonna be a little tricky. You'll have to declare the position, prior to the start of these loops, initialize it here, return it later. You could do that. You could do that if you want to try it. That's fine. But I think it'd just be best to just go ahead and say return it. Let's just return our new position. This is not a matrix. If you don't want to subscript this with brackets. A position is not a matrix. A position is a class. It's a class with a constructor that accepts 2 int values. Okay. So I give it the 2 int values, the row and the column indexes that I found. Null is my fallback plan. Okay, no, so I'm just going to leave that here. If I don't put the word else, right? If we exhaust both of these loops, then we can say null, but not a second sooner. All right, so there we go. There's part A. Okay, now in part B, we're going to have to find a position's successor, which is simply the next value. So remember in the last problem, we searched for 8, okay? And we found 8. It was at position 2, 1, row 2, column 1. The successor to 8 would be 9. 9's one more than 8, okay? So if you gave me a position, I could go to that position and then, so I would try to find its successor, and they want me to then make a successor matrix in a sense, okay, or an array. And so it's an array of positions. It's a matrix of positions, but you don't put in like the same positions we were finding in part A. It's the successors, which are one more. So if they tell me like in the matrix, hey, here's an 8, I'm actually going to go look for 9. If they tell me, hey, here's a 15, I'm going to go look for 16. If they tell me here's a 16, I'm going to go look for 17. Now, if you remember, when we searched for 17, we didn't find it. It said null. So notice that the position that came back is null. When we found 8 earlier, it said row 2, column 1. We don't see that here. We see 0, 2. Why is it 0, 2 and not 2, 1? Well, remember 0. That's taking you to the successor of 8. The successor of 8 is 9. So we didn't put 2, 1 here. We put 0, 2 because that was the the row column combination of the successor. All right. So a couple of weird things here. Again, there's no instance fields in this class. Okay, these are static standalone methods. So you only have what they give you, which is an array of integers. And if they want you to return something like a position matrix, then you're responsible for making it, okay? So if I want to make a position matrix, okay, and there was kind of like a joke this year, kids that took this test, they thought it was funny that they got to name their matrix Sucks. Okay, there's some middle school humor for you. All right, this is a new position matrix. Now, this matrix has to have dimensions. Well, that's fine. Its dimensions are going to be the same as the int array that was handed to us. Okay, so I'll take the number of rows here, and I'll take the number of columns here. Okay, and now I have like matching dimensions in this matrix. And then later, I'll go ahead and return it. If I returned it right now, it would actually have the correct dimensions, but we would just see null pointers all across the board. Okay, just null, null, null at every spot. So that's not what we're looking for. We're looking to put in those positions, the successor positions. All right. So just like before, we're going to have to loop across all the way. In fact, we could actually, if you don't mind, we'll just reuse the same 2 loops from earlier. Okay, and the difference is this time now, I'm not going to actually go into the array looking for a number. They didn't give me like like a get value or something. So I'm going to have to instead find the position. Okay, so I'm going to have to say like go find this position for me, having it be one more than the value that came out of the matrix. And again, this is another problem where they're clear. Okay, you got to use find position. So if you're not using find position to do the work for you, you're not doing the problem correctly. So how do we use find position? Okay, well, if you want to use find position, you've got to give it a number to search for and a matrix address. Well, okay, the matrix address, that's no big deal. They gave it to me. So if I wanted to call find position, okay, I'd have to give it an int followed by an int matrix. Well, the int matrix is easy. They gave it to me. The position that I want to find, this is where it's a little tricky, is I want to go into the int array, okay, and I want to get a number from it. So maybe it says 8. Well, I want to find one more than that. That's the successor, okay? One more than the integer at that position, that's your successor. This method that I'm calling, right, the one that we wrote in part A, returns a position. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome that it returns a position, because I have a matrix that holds positions. So the only thing allowed into my matrix is a position reference, and that's what I have now. So that's perfect. That's what I wanted. That's what the method gave me. That's not a coincidence. And then I can put that position into my matrix. In fact, you could easily do this in one line of code. Just, right here, just say I'm going to put sucks RC and initialize it with that position that we're making. Why didn't I write the word new? Well, I'm not going to a constructor. I'm going to a method that returns a position, right? That's the return type of the method. The matrix holds position references. So this is going to construct the position for me, and it's going to put it in there. And if you look carefully at this is a recreation of what we saw on the directions over here. Like, I don't know if you remember, we saw the null, we saw the 0, 2. There's the 1, 1 was in the top left corner. Now we see. So anyway, these values here, see the 1, 1 top left, 2, 1 bottom right. Those are the same values that we're seeing here. So this was just recreating that, and it's working perfectly. All right. This is object-oriented programming at its finest here. We have to understand what this object position is, and we have to be able to work with anything that they make up for us. Okay.